Hey there guys, welcome to the next video here on PopCultureCrafts. This video is going to be all about how to put together a good cosplay, and it's more or less filmed for people who are brand new to cosplay and want to know how to put together a good costume, or people who have maybe put together a few costumes and you weren't really happy with the process that you went through to kind of go from start to finish. And if you made a few costumes before and you've got a great system down, you probably don't need to watch this video. You may just watch it for the fun of it. So here we go. Alright, so as I'm going through these images, I want to have a good example cosplay to kind of draw some parallels between the two. So I'm going to be using my Ash Ketchum cosplay for that. It's a relatively simple costume. It doesn't have a whole lot put into it, but as I'm going through the video and kind of laying out the step-by-step processes, I want to kind of draw parallels so you guys can link it into whatever kind of cosplay you're specifically trying to make at home. So let's get started on the first step. The first step isn't really a step at all. It's kind of like that idea that you get when you want to cosplay a certain character. It could be when you were watching like a TV show or a cartoon or a movie or something like that. You got that bright idea in your head, oh my goodness, I want to cosplay that character. And that's really your first step. The next thing I would usually do is go to concept images. So concept images are really just pictures of the character wearing the cosplay that you want to do, the specific costume, because some characters have a bunch of different costumes. If you're trying to pick a certain one, type the character into Google Images, 4 million pictures will come up, right click on each one you want to save and save them to a folder on your computer. And I'll do this with about 40 or 50 pictures. I'll also save pictures of other people cosplaying the character. There's a whole bunch of them, and it'll kind of give me an idea of how they did it just by looking at the picture. It's a great way to kind of decide on whether or not you want to do it. I've personally had a few costume plays where I've gone onto the concept images and thought, whoa, there's no way I can do that. And that's kind of where my journey for that particular cosplay ended, right there before I spent any money, before I even put any more thought into it. The concept images decided on whether or not I could continue from there. So it really helps to just gather as many of those as possible. It'll give you an idea further down the line when you're trying to match up what you have to what the character is actually wearing. And it'll just really provide you with some great ideas on how to go about putting together the costume. So after you got all your images saved to your computer, you know for sure that you want to make this cosplay. The next thing you need to do is really come out with a battle plan on how to attack the costume. Now, some of the questions I personally ask myself when I'm working on this are there enough places around to get supplies? I'm talking about craft stores, sometimes consignment shops, thrift shops. If you're trying to get stuff that you don't necessarily want to make it yourself, but you are searching thrift stores to be able to find it, it definitely helps to have a lot of those in your area. Some of the things I also ask myself is, do I have enough money to budget to the costume? I usually budget my costumes, like $100, $125, something like that, and that'll kind of dictate so you don't spend too much and you have a specific budget with which to work with. Another thing is tools. Do I have all the tools that I need to make a particular cosplay? And sewing machine is probably the most common thing. A lot of cosplayers will use a sewing machine, so if you don't have one, you may need to make arrangements to use one. Maybe a friend has one or something along those lines. Another important thing is a deadline. If you are making a cosplay for a specific convention or a place when you're trying to wear it, you need to factor that into your whole thing that you're making. And you kind of want to have a deadline to about 2 weeks before, and I'll discuss that later. But if your convention is 4 months away, then you really need to have a timeline you need to make everything, and you want to get everything done no later than 2 weeks before the convention. And like I said, I'll explain that a little bit later. If you don't have really a deadline, definitely set one, because you want to be able to have the motivation to work towards that deadline, but you also don't want to set the deadline so far away that you'll lose interest on it. If it's like 2 years away, it's way too far. Move it up to 5 or 6 months, maybe 7 or 8 months, depending on if you have the time to work on a particular costume. The third step is to really decide how complex and accurate that you want it to be. Now, every single cosplayer that puts on a costume or decides they want to make a costume has a different outlook on this step. It's totally up to you how accurate and complex you want to make your costume. And it's especially true if you're making it mostly for yourself to really show off and something that you want to do personally and kind of show it off to other people. I tend to lean a little bit on the more accurate side of that spectrum. There are people who are just, if it's good enough, that's fine for me. And there are people who, if it's not absolutely perfect and 100% accurate to the the original character costume, then I won't wear it. So I'm kind of a little bit towards, you know, that section where it definitely want to go with more accurate. Definitely know that when you try to go more accurate and more complex to the original source material, it will cost more money. You know, more accuracy always equals more money, because you're going to go out of your way to, you know, find the right things and make sure that it's 100% accurate. But like I said, everyone has a different, you know, outlook on that. It's totally up to you and how accurate you want to make it. Don't let anybody tell you that, you know, it should be this or it should be that. It's really totally up to you, and that's universal across all forms of cosplay. So to kind of draw a parallel here, going back to the Ash Ketchum costume, I've seen about 14 or 15 Ash Ketchums before, and those were all at New York Comic Con last October. And I noticed a lot of the people who made this cosplay just the same as I was wearing mine was that they didn't make the shoes, you know, really accurate to the actual costume. And that's perfectly fine. That's exactly what they wanted to do. That's as far as they wanted to go, you know, just to throw on a normal pair of sneakers and go that far. But I personally wanted to really put the time and effort into making the shoes look really accurate. So that was my personal decision. That's something that I wanted to do, but you can see how, you know, like, if you want to focus on one specific thing, you can make that as accurate as possible. And of course, I had to spend a little bit of money, you know, just to get the acrylic paint. It wasn't very much, but, you know, I had to have an old pair of shoes to use, and I had to take those extra steps to make it look as accurate as I wanted it to be. So that's where that money factor also comes in. But as I said before, totally up to you. A lot of people will just, you know, they'll put up what they want, and then they'll make stuff as accurate as they really want to. And you really can't judge them on it, because you have the exact same, you know, kind of thought process when it comes to something being accurate. And a lot of the times there's also things in your costume that aren't 100% accurate as well. So it kind of goes both ways. So this fourth step, I'm kind of going to discuss the different ways that you can work on a cosplay. Some people, what they'll do is they'll kind of get all of it at one time. Like, they'll save up all their money, and then if they're buying stuff online, they'll buy all that stuff at the same time. You know, within a week, it'll all come at different times through the mail, and then they'll make, you know, all the stuff they need, and then throw it all together kind of like a puzzle. I don't know too many people that do that. The problem with doing it that specific way is that it may not all look correct when you throw it all together. You know, the colors might not match, the different pieces of clothing might not, you know, just jive well together. So I don't know too many people that do that specific method. A lot of people, what I personally do is my method, is that I'll acquire each piece at the same time, and kind of, not at the same time, at different times, and kind of work through it step by step. So I'll work on the shoes first. I'll make sure those are going to kind of in my mind work with the rest of the costume once I kind of visualize what it's going to look like. And I'm thinking of that the entire time I'm working on each piece. So with the Ash Ketchum costumes before, when I worked on the shoes, I moved up from there to the jeans, which I already had. So from right there, I was able to see the shoes work well with the jeans. And then you kind of go all the way up the line to make sure that every piece of the costume typically works like it, you know, it works together, and it kind of, you know, jives and gels together. There aren't too many cosplays that will really be totally off if you do it all at the same time, but I think it really helps to kind of work through the process and kind of get an idea of what each piece looks like before you move on to the next one, because then you can kind of base all of your future stuff off of that one piece in the cosplay, if that makes sense. It's kind of like climbing up the ladder instead of, you know, just jumping to the top, if that were possible. So that's one of the really two different ways that people work on cosplays. So now we come to that point I was making earlier about your deadline and making sure the cosplay is done about 2 weeks before you need it, if that's you know, the way that you're going. The reason that I say that is because you want to have an opportunity to road test your costume. And by road test, I don't mean you're going to throw it on and you're going to go on like a 5-mile run. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're planning on wearing it at a specific event, you need to make sure it's going to hold up and it's going to work for that whole event. For example, if I'm making a cosplay for New York Comic Con, I'm going to be on my feet for 13 hours. Maybe I'm going to sit through a few panels. I need to be able to sit down. I need to be able to stand on my feet for a very long period of time. So you need to factor that in. Some cosplays you're not able to sit down because you're going to be crunching something and stuff like that. So those people have to be mindful of the fact that they're not going to be able to sit down the entire convention. And that can be really crazy because some people aren't used to, you know, standing around for 13 hours. Not a lot of people are. So you want to kind of do a dry run. Make sure you do everything at home for a few days to kind of prepare you for what you're going to be doing at a convention. If you know you can't sit down at the convention, then get into your costume and walk around your house, just go about your daily life that day, but stay on your feet for that whole time, just to see if you can do it. And some of the things you're going to run into, like if you have to go to the bathroom, that's a major thing when you're in costume. And if you have to take stuff off, it's going to be really crazy if you didn't think about that beforehand. Trust me, happens a lot. So definitely, make sure you have everything done about, 2 weeks before your deadline, if you have a deadline, so that you can road test it, you can test it out, make sure it doesn't fall apart. That 2 weeks will also give you time to work and fix something if it doesn't work. Maybe order something online, maybe re-glue something, attach it, maybe make something completely different and stick it back on your costume. So that's why the deadline is there, and 2 weeks beforehand. Alright, so I think that's pretty much going to wrap up this video on how to put together an effective cosplay. I do apologize for speaking a little fast. I know I'm usually, spitting the words out a lot faster than I usually would be, but that's just, I'm trying to save as much time as possible, because if I wanted to go on and on about this video could literally be about 20 minutes long. I didn't exactly want it to be that long. So hope you guys like this the video on how to put together an effective cosplay. I hope it really helps you guys to kind of work on your own cosplay and gives you guys a great idea of how to go about putting something together and having a really good basis and system for the future. Because once you get a good basis and a good system, you can apply that to all your future cosplays and really just streamline and remove a lot of the stress from the entire activity that you're doing. So catch you guys next time on the channel. A lot of great pop culture craft videos coming to the channel pretty soon, so watch out for those. Catch you next time.